Imagine a war so devastating, so brutal, that it completely reshapes an entire continent. We're talking about a 30-year catastrophe that, even today, casts a long shadow over our world. This is the story of the 30 Years' War. To really get a handle on this, you have to start with the human cost, because the numbers are just staggering. An estimated 8 million people died. That's soldiers and civilians alike. Entire regions were just wiped out by the fighting, the famine, and the plague that always followed the armies.
The suffering was so absolute, the desperation so deep, that it really pushed humanity to its absolute darkest edge. I mean, this wasn't just a war between armies. It felt like a war on society itself.
So, how on earth did Europe fall into this much chaos? Well, here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with the initial spark, then watch how that fire engulfs the whole continent. We'll meet a legendary warrior known as the Lion of the North, try to figure out why the war just wouldn't end, and finally look at the peace treaty that built a new world from the ashes.
You know, our story doesn't begin with some grand declaration of war between kings. Nope. It all starts with one single dramatic act of rebellion right in the heart of the Holy Roman Empire.
So, for decades, a really tense peace in Central Europe was held together by this one little Latin phrase, cuius regio ius religio. Basically, it meant his realm, his religion. The local prince or duke decided if his territory was Catholic or Protestant. But honestly, this was just a bandage on a very, very deep wound.
See, you gotta understand, the Holy Roman Empire wasn't a unified country like Germany is today. Oh no. It was this chaotic, messy patchwork of hundreds of little states, all with their own rulers. And looming over all of them was the very powerful and very Catholic Habsburg Emperor. And the Habsburgs were this massive royal dynasty that controlled not just the empire, but Spain too. So this whole region was basically a giant powder keg, just waiting for someone to light a match.
And that match was lit in Prague, back in 1618. A group of Protestant nobles were absolutely furious that their Catholic king was crushing their religious freedoms. So they stormed Prague Castle, held a quick, angry little trial, and then they chucked two of the king's ministers and their secretary straight out of a third-story window.
Now, here's the crazy part. The men actually survived the fall. The Catholics immediately claimed it was a miracle, that angels swooped down and saved them. The Protestants, well, they had a slightly less holy explanation. They just said they landed in a giant pile of manure. And that one event, with its two totally different stories, perfectly captures the huge gap between the two sides that was about to rip Europe apart.
So what started as a local spat in Bohemia, it spiraled out of control, fast. The emperor called in his powerful family and allies, and before you knew it, countries from all over the continent were being dragged into the fight.
In the beginning, the Catholic and imperial side was an absolute juggernaut. They completely crushed the revolt in Bohemia, then just swept across Germany. The Protestant king of Denmark got nervous and invaded to help, but he got totally crushed too. By 1629, it looked like the Catholic cause had won, period.
Just when the Protestant cause seemed totally hopeless, a new champion entered the ring. And this guy wasn't just a king, he was a military genius who was about to change everything.
Right as this new force arrived, one of the war's greatest horrors took place. Imperial troops sacked the Protestant city of Magdeburg, killing over 20,000 people in just a horrific frenzy of violence. The massacre became this massive rallying cry for Protestants everywhere, and the phrase Magdeburg Mercy became a dark, sarcastic term for total destruction.
The man leading the charge was King Gustavus Adolphus of Sweden. He basically threw out the old playbook. You see, everyone was using these big, slow, defensive formations. Gustavus came in with smaller, more flexible units, packed with way more firearms, and crucially, light, mobile artillery that could move around the battlefield. His army was fast, aggressive, and unbelievably deadly.
And it worked. Gustavus and his Swedish army just tore through the imperial forces, winning one stunning victory after another. But then, at the Battle of Lutzen in 1632, disaster. The Swedes won the battle, but the king himself, leading a cavalry charge into the thick smoke, was shot and killed. The Lion of the North was dead, and the Protestant cause had lost its greatest hero.
So you'd think, right? The great Protestant champion is dead, his main Catholic rivals are also gone. Maybe, just maybe, the war will finally wind down. Nope. It was about to enter its most cynical,
most destructive phase, where faith took a backseat to pure, naked power.
I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? The original religious firebrands were pretty much all gone, so why keep fighting? The answer lies with a new player entering the game, one whose motives had absolutely nothing to do with religion.
And that new player, believe it or not, was Catholic France. See, France was surrounded by lands controlled by its great rivals, the Habsburgs, and it was terrified of being crushed between them. So, in a shocking move of pure political calculation, France declared war on the Catholic Habsburgs and started pouring money and troops in to support the Protestant Swedes. And just like that, the war changed. It wasn't about God anymore, it was about who would rule Europe.
In this last phase of the war was absolute hell for the people of Germany. For more than a decade, massive armies from all sides, French, Swedish, Spanish, Imperial, just marched back and forth across their land, stealing everything, killing everyone, and spreading disease in a cycle of misery that seemed like it would never, ever end.
After 30 long years of unimaginable bloodshed, everyone was just exhausted. They were broke, they were beaten, and they were finally ready to talk. They came to the negotiating table to hammer out a peace that wouldn't just end this war, but would reshape the entire continent.
And you just can't overstate the devastation. This was a demographic catastrophe. In the hardest hit parts of Germany, the population dropped by over 60%. To put that in perspective, some areas lost more people proportionally than Germany did in World War I and World War II combined. So the peace treaty they finally signed in 1648 basically redrew the map of Europe. The Netherlands and Switzerland were officially recognized as independent. It established greater religious tolerance. The big winners, France and Sweden, got new territory and a ton of influence. And maybe most importantly, the power of the Holy Roman Emperor was broken for good.
But here's the war's biggest legacy, the thing that still impacts us today. The Peace of Westphalia laid the foundation for our modern world. It created the core idea of national sovereignty, the principle that a nation is independent and other countries can't just meddle in its affairs. That is still the bedrock of how countries deal with each other.
In the end, the 30 Years' War is just a horrifying lesson. It's a terrifying reminder of how religious intolerance and political greed can take one small dispute and let it spiral into a continental disaster. It is a warning from history about how fragile peace really is, and how easily a tiny spark can ignite a fire that burns for generations.